Hi and welcome to the Millennium Chess YouTube channel. My name is Lara Schulze. I'm a professional chess player from Germany. I am Women International Master and FIDE Master, and I'm part of the German national team. I was German champion in classical chess and rapid chess several times, and I'm also a chess coach. This is a new series in which I will show you beautiful chess games. I will choose games which are interesting, entertaining, and from which you can learn something. I will present you the games on a Millennium chessboard. You may wonder why there are dots between the squares. That's because the board has special features. For example, you can play an online game and still have the over-the-board experience, because you can use this board and it will show you the move of your opponents with those lights. If you want to learn more about this, please visit the Millennium website. You can find the link below the video. But today I will just use this beautiful board to present the game to you. Today I will show you a game with a queen sacrifice and very exciting actions. It was played between Goryachkina, Alexandra Goryachkina, with the white pieces. She was a former world champion challenger and is one of the strongest women. And black was played by Tsolakidou. She was a former world youth champion, and she played a very beautiful game with black. So let's start with the game. Goryachkina started with the move d4, and Tsolakidou went for the King's Indian defense. So she played knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, and bishop g7. White took the center with the move e4, and now black has to be careful that white cannot play e5 immediately in the next move. So black played d6 and white went for the Demisch variation with f3. Short castle by black and bishop e3, and now black has to challenge the center. There are two ways to do this, either with e5 or with c5, and c5 was a way in the game. Now white has the opportunity to push d5 and take a lot of space, but Goryachkina decided to play knight e2 first, and then only after knight c6 she played the move d5 to attack the knight, and the knight jumped to e5. The knight is a very strong piece in the center. It attacks the pawn on c4, but it's not really safe because sometimes white can push f4 to kick this knight away. So black has to play very energetically and has to be very active, because otherwise white has more space, more opportunities. But first white has to defend this pawn on c4, and white played knight g3. Now the bishop is free and covers the pawn on c4. Now Tsolakidou played a very typical plan against this knight on g3. She played h5 to kick the knight with h4. This is very active, but also quite risky, because the pawn on h4 is, can be a weakness. But at the moment the knight on g3 has no good squares, only e2 at the moment. This is not a good option because the c4 pawn is again a problem. So white played bishop e2, h4, and knight f1. Now black has a lead in development because the king is still in the middle and the knight on f1 is a bad piece. It has to move again. So black needs to open the position to use this lead in development. That's why black played e6 and attacked the pawn on d5. Now white played bishop g5. This is a very strong move because now we see that the pawn on h4 is a weakness and cannot be protected, and so black took on d5, white took with the knight, and bishop e6. Now all pieces are in the game, and white can take this pawn on h4. That's the best move, but it's still not so easy for white to bring the pieces out, because black can take on d5, play rook e8, maybe challenge the center from the queen side with b5, and black has very active play, but white is a pawn up. Interesting game, interesting position, but that was not played in the game by Goryachkina and Tsolakidou. Goryachkina made a huge mistake in this position. She played knight f2 e3. It looks like a very normal move. The knight on e3 is seems to be a good piece. It controls the d5 square, and now white can play short castle in the next move. But black has a very nice move here. If you want, you can pause the video and try to find it. It's not so easy, but I wish you good luck. The best move in this position is the stunning queen sacrifice with knight takes d5. White has to take the queen on d8, otherwise the bishop on g5 is just hanging. So white took it, and black can take the knight on e3. Now black has only 2 minor pieces for the queen. That's why it's very amazing to take on d5 in this position. But the minor pieces are very strong in this position. First, the queen is attacked, so white has to move the queen to b3. But now the knight on e3 is attacked, and black has no time to take the bishop on d8. So black took on g2 instead with check, king f2, and knight f4. So still only 2 minor pieces, but now black has the threat to take this bishop on d8. Then it would be 3 minor pieces. This is enough material for the queen. So Goryachkina played bishop e7. It also attacks the rook. So why are 2 minor pieces enough for the queen in this position for black? Black has a strong opportunity to take this bishop on e2. Again, a very stunning move, because the rook on f8 was attacked by the bishop, but black just ignores this and takes this bishop on e2. If white takes back, then we can see that this queen on b3 is also not safe, because bishop takes c4 wins the queen back. It's a double attack. So the knight on e2 is safe, and white cannot take it. White took on f8 instead, and black took back. So now we have a very interesting material balance. White has a queen and a rook, and black has 4 minor pieces, 2 knights and 2 bishops. It's a very crazy position and not so easy to understand. But black has the much stronger position. The minor pieces are very powerful in this position. The knights have very good squares on f4, e5, d4 in the center, where they are protected. They are taking a lot of things. And the bishops have very strong diagonals. This bishop can take on c4. This bishop on g7 has a long diagonal and has a look on this pawn on b2 and the rook on a1. And the queen and the rook for white, they are also quite vulnerable, and they don't have any good lines and squares to, for example, to attack the black's king, which is really safe on g8. It's white to move, and Goryachkina took on b7. And now black has to be careful with his knight on e2 because yeah, now white has a threat to take it. Bishop takes c4 and the knight on e2 is safe. b3, bishop d3 and rook a to d1. Now black has still yeah, to coordinate the pieces because now maybe white can take on d3 and then take on e2. So Tsolakidou went back to f4 with the knight. But here we can see that the harmony between the black's minor pieces is very good. They are defending each other. They have good possibilities to give checks. The king on f2 is not very safe. And the harmony between the white pieces is quite bad. The queen is alone on b7. The rooks have no good squares. So white decided to give a rook against the bishop and took on d3. But that's also quite nice for black because now we have 3 minor pieces against the queen. Black took with the knight, king to e3, another check with bishop d4 and a king to d2. Now black has to open the position to bring the rook into action. The rook on f8 is the worst piece in this case. So black tried c4 to open some lines. So if white takes, then black has a lot of possibilities like knight c5, and if the rook comes to b8 and to b2, there's mate soon. The white's king is in a dangerous place here. So white tried to defend the king with rook d1 and d5. If white takes, then rook e8 and rook e2 mate. So white tried to escape with the king, but this is not really possible here. Black played the interesting move knight g2. This is not the only move. Black has a lot of opportunities here. Knight g2 has the idea to give a fork on e3. In the game, white took on d5, gave another exchange. Knight e3 check, knight takes d1, king takes d1. And c3. Now the c3 pawn is a very strong pass pawn, while the white pawn on the d file is not really dangerous for black. Black can easily control the square on d8. So black played bishop f6, queen b5, knight e5, f4, knight f3, d7, c2 check. If white takes, then there's another fork on d4. So white has to block the pawn with king c1. Still knight d4, queen a6, king g7 to protect the bishop on g6 on f6. White took, and now Tsolakidou played the strong move g5 to create another pass pawn and to give the bishop the possibility to check the king on c1. If white takes, bishop takes with check, and black gets a queen in the next move. So white tried queen b7, but then black just took the pawn on f4 and will queen with the f pawn in a few moves. Check, king h6, queen g4, bishop g5, and white resigned because next move is f3, and then the king has to move and c1 with queen. So yeah, it was a crazy game with these minor pieces, these very powerful minor pieces. So what can we learn from this game? We can learn to be open to sacrifice, and we can also learn from this to not underestimate the minor pieces, because minor pieces can be very powerful if they are good coordinated and in a great harmony. So do not underestimate the minor pieces. Sometimes they are stronger than the queen. stronger than the queen and the rook, and this is a great example of, yeah, the power of knights and bishops. I hope you liked this game, and please subscribe to the channel, then you won't miss any games which I will show you in the next days and weeks. And yeah, see you next time.